All right, everybody. We gave a couple extra minutes here to let people log in. I want to thank you for joining us on this workshop for cybersecurity in the healthcare industry. We're Ember Technologies. I am Jonathan Sanchez, the president and co-founder. Tarek Azmi is also with us. He's my vice president and technology guru. He's also my cybersecurity specialist. I'm the compliance specialist. So we'll go down this. Save your questions for the end. We'll have some time for Q&A. We're going to start a little bit with who we are and what our value statement is, what our mission and philosophy is. We are a IT company that specializes in technology operations, primarily focusing in compliance-based industries, healthcare, finance, with healthcare being 80% of what we do. Our main focus in healthcare is kind of altruistic. We understand that it's an industry that impacts individuals beyond the business in terms of well-being and care. We are there to help empower the providers and the staff to make a difference for the families and the patients. And what we're going to talk about as this progresses is how cybersecurity can play a role in even the patient impact beyond just the business and providers' ability to provide the care. Going down, just kind of some basics to recap what cybersecurity is. I know we've done previous workshops and there's kind of a high-level understanding of what cybersecurity is. Just want to touch base on it again. We're going with the Department of Homeland Security's definition here for their Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Cybersecurity is the art of protecting networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access or criminal use, and the practices of ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. The big takeaway from that I want everyone to understand is that it's a art, it's a practice, it is a best effort scenario. Threats are evolving all the time. We can't totally 100% mitigate any threat. You can throw all the money in the world at it, but someone's going to come up with something new in the next hour that we haven't heard of before. So just something to consider in understanding that it's a best effort scenario. We do what we can. Everyone does. We'll get into a little bit more detail on what some of those efforts are. Some of the common types of cyber threats that we look for and try to prevent are what we call hacker, attacker, intruder. Those are the bad guys sitting in a cubicle somewhere or in their basement or in their garage doing forced attempts to exploit weaknesses into computer systems. Malicious code, also known as malware. This is something that you could get in your email, click, open up, accidentally install. It's also something that if you're not careful with where you buy your parts or who you're buying your equipment from, it can be embedded in the hardware. So this is one of the reasons that vendor management is a big part of cybersecurity, is understanding who's selling you what and what their vulnerabilities and history have been. Buying a Dell versus buying a white label box from the company down the street. Where did the white label box get their parts? Did they order them from China? Is there some embedded code in there that we need to worry about? And a lot of times that code, the best efforts in the world, can't be mitigated because it's below the operating system and below a lot of the security features that we can implement. Vulnerabilities, again, this kind of builds into some of the exploits that can be built into the hardware, but it also deals with exploits in software and firmware, such as like browser hijacking in your Internet Explorer, your Chrome, or your Firefox. These were known ideas where people can jump in and take the code, watch what you're inputting, and kind of hijack your session. So those are old, have been around a while, since the 90s, but it's definitely worth addressing still, because even though it's old and we know about it, it changes all the time. So something to consider. IoT exploits. This is huge. Internet of Things right now is probably the biggest vulnerability in any industry. And what this is when we talk about Internet of Things devices, it's anything that connects to your network, anything with an IP address or connects to the Wi-Fi. This could be a nurse call system with IP-based connectivity. And if there's microphones built into it, the ability to drop in and eavesdrop off those devices, or to cause the devices to go down, which can put your care providers and your patients at risk, residents in senior care facilities. have to deal with some monitoring, so it can give false alerts, false positives. This can not only hamper your ability to provide patient care, but it's going to cost you operationally in your response time to this. So understanding how to secure some of those devices is a big thing. And a lot of those devices are proprietary, meaning that we can't actually get into the device and secure it in and of itself. We're going to have to secure the perimeter around that device. And that's where knowledge in networking and firewalls, as well as some of the ancillary systems and rules and policies and procedures come into play. Annual training is a big thing. Your end users are your biggest liability. When to open the link, what to expect, who to give information to in a phone call. Social engineering is also a big part of cybersecurity, and that's that final piece. The people, just the lack of awareness in what is out there. Everyone's vaguely familiar, at least at a high level, familiar with the fact that there's vulnerabilities. There's bad people out there that want your information. So we just kind of go over some opportunities to fix that as well. Cybersecurity related to the healthcare industry, the most glaring and obvious thing here is the compliance factor of everything. Operationally, patient care, that's all something to consider, but compliance, HIPAA, and high tech used to just be something that was there, and they had no real teeth to them, but they are actively pursuing those. And then the growth of like meaningful use and transition to where they were providing awards on transition to software-based medical records and practice management. Now they're actually taking away the incentives and have transitioned to a merit-based incentive payment system, MIPS, where they will penalize you for not being secure and up-to-date and modern. So in addition to HIPAA, where you have the security rule and the privacy rule that you have to accommodate through your technical infrastructure and the security rule, as well as the privacy rule, which is more around the operations and policies and procedures and how to handle PHI. Violations in those are coming with teeth now. So the enforcement rule being the third part of that, they can come in. We'll get into some case studies on some of those and how these threats are growing and the change in approach to it. It's pretty creative and it's kind of scary, but we'll get into it. The Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health, the HITECH Act of 2009, just kind of builds on the security rule, gives you some kind of best efforts, best practices that they want you to accommodate. Those are kind of minimal because they're 11 years old, so it's changed. We'll talk about how that's needing to evolve and what we're going to do there. And then there's just basic business understandings, like how to do, are you taking payment? Are you storing credit information? Are you processing credit cards? There's liability in that that's not necessarily specific to the healthcare industry, but it's a business compliance standard that any business that does it has to be compliant with. And then we'll also, National Institute of Standards and Technology, there's some references, you guys will have copies of this. All these links are something that you can look into and kind of review on your own, and most of it's going to apply to you, but there are a few things that are specific to other areas, and that's really where you get a consultant or a professional in the industry to come talk to you. Some of the case studies I mentioned, so kind of have them here starting back in 2018. There's been, just breaches of health data is kind of how it started. Cyber attacks at Anthem back in October of 18. The actual attacks took place in 16 and 17. Violations of the privacy and security rule. The enforcement rule laid out a $16 million fee to Anthem. There was, on May 6th of 2019, Touchstone Medical. This one was interesting because it was actually, there was no criminal act involved. There was no attacker or hacker. If this is a fallout from a person doing their job wrong and putting patient data on the internet accidentally, I don't believe this one actually had malicious intent. So one of the unique penalties to the enforcement rule is if an individual is found to be doing it maliciously, not only will the business get fined, but the individual will get fined, and there's jail time that can go along with that. So this one did not report any individual fine. So I have a feeling it was just ignorance in what they were doing, or a mistake in general. The one in November of 2019, this one actually was another health commission by a state government in Texas that ended up paying to the federal level when the OCR found out that Texas Health and Human Services had a enterprise-wide risk. They did not implement some of the audit controls and systems that they had found during it, that these were known vulnerabilities. So this was something they just go, we know it's there, but we don't have the money. Well, not having the money is not an excuse. I mean, this is an obligation to do business and protect the PHI of your patients and residents. And then the most current one in January, this one is unique. We've seen some of these cases come out of Europe and GDPR reports on this, but what's happening are hackers are jumping in there and they're not stopping your business. They're not putting ransomware directly on your computer and then just locking your computer and telling you that they're going to release it for a set amount of money. What they're doing is saying, hey, we have this information. We know what the HIPAA fees are or what the GDPR fees are as far as what they were doing in Europe. They go, it's going to cost you 10 million through them, or you can give us 5 million and we won't tell on you, let you know, report you, let you know. The other side to it is they're not even ransoming the businesses anymore. They're going to the patients directly and going, hey, we stole your information from such and such entity. Not only can the GDPR or HIPAA come down and level penalties against them, now they have civil lawsuits coming out. So it's to the point now to where if you get hit and this is the scenario, you're going to pay that ransomware. You're going to, you're obligated to self-report, but it's going to get expensive. So we really have to mitigate the risk of some of this. And again, it's a best practices scenario. So it's one of those things you invest the time and the money into, and it's not 100% guaranteed, but the effort is very visible. And as long as you have policies and procedures written, which is a big part of HIPAA compliance, is writing policies and procedures, the annual training, and employees signing off on them. That will help you mitigate some of the cost and penalties that could be associated with that vulnerability or that violation. So that's kind of what's going on currently. We're going to talk about what the future holds. In light of the current pandemic and COVID, we actually have seen a spike in cybersecurity events, cyber threats, cyber criminal activity, both in the nation and worldwide, targeting multiple industries. Small physician-owned facilities and community-owned facilities seem to be targeted more than your big Via Christie's or Ascensions or HCAs of the world. They have the money to put an infrastructure together at hundreds of millions of dollars. Smaller businesses a lot of times look at it as a necessary evil or a cost center, and they throw the minimal amount of money at it, which might be tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars, which the surface area is smaller, but they're a lot easier to target. So the FBI has actually released at the end of last year a statement saying, hey, if you get hit by ransomware, let us know. There's no safety net saying that they won't take you to the Department of Health and Human Services, but because the increase has been there, it's one of those things where it's kind of a tribal immunity, if you will. So the more that we know about it, the more of a knowledge base we can build, the more we can react to it as an industry. So it's one of those, again, a kind of some altruism into self-reporting, forcing your own hand to respond, as well as future-proofing some of the vulnerabilities. Trend Micro is a security professional company. They're a technology professional company. It's an interesting read. They cross multiple markets. Some of their predictions for this year mainly centered around cyber criminals and targeting IoT devices, the Internet of Things devices, espionage and extortion being the biggest thing. Home offices and remote working setups. That was something that they were worried about even before COVID hit. So the fact that COVID hit, this has kind of jumped to the top of the list, is what kind of securities are involved in working from home. And again, the technology comes into play, but there's also the policies and procedures, the end user training that needs to take place. So again, technology and operations go hand in hand. Your CIO traditionally has reported up the CFO chain, but in modern business standards, your CIO or IT director should be reporting operationally through your COO, because that's where your largest surface area overlap is interdepartmentally. And again, working with your vendors, it comes into configuration of third-party involvement. Cloud platforms are not something to be scared of. Misconfiguring or not using them correctly is where you need to be scared. If you're putting stuff in Google's cloud or Microsoft's cloud or Amazon's cloud, they have billion-dollar infrastructures behind there. They are a much harder target than you can ever be on your own. But what you have to do is use their best practices and standards when you're overlapping your business into theirs and using some of their hosted infrastructure. The ability to do what they call man-in-the-middle attacks or injection attacks, to where they're hijacking your connection between your facility and a hosted facility like a cloud or application service, is where the vulnerability is. And that is why you have to tie up with best practices. That is why you do not only the minimal standards that the software application provider or the cloud provider is asking of you, but you take it a step further. And then there's legal compliance that you need to have in there. The healthcare industry, every vendor that touches your infrastructure in any way, whether it's your HVAC guy plugging in remote thermostats, or OR monitoring for humidity, or nurse call system, or medical beds, you're an outsourced IT company, you need to have an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement with them that spells out where indemnities are, as well as a business associates agreement. These are just some of the things that it's not going to help you eliminate any vulnerabilities technically, but it's going to let them know that you take it seriously and that they should address it. So, and they have teeth. They do have teeth. Just something to tell everybody that you're doing your best efforts, and it's part of vendor management. So, something to consider. I definitely recommend reading that Trend Micro Security Predictions. The link's at the bottom again. You guys will get copies of this. So that helps a lot. Interesting read. A lot of things won't apply, but very interesting read. Some basics in security management. Manage your antivirus, spam filtering, network and desktop antivirus. Are desktop's pretty common. You can implement it on your network. You can also do secure information event management, or SIEM services, with a security operations center if you're super concerned, or if you've been targeted in the past. That is pretty high level stuff, but again, it really depends on how much vulnerability you're wanting to mitigate, and how big of a target you have been in the past. Intrusion prevention and detection, endpoint device recognition, that's a big thing. Any devices that are in your network that disappear, you can do rogue device detection, and they'll let you know that they've been off the network longer than a predetermined amount of time. So maybe that device got stolen, and any device that was on, or any information on that device, you need to be concerned about and probably report, as well as any device that's added to your network that you were not expecting. Why is it on your network? And that's your production network. Again, you'll separate out your guest network, but we get into that through operational practices, as well as some technical policies in your network. Big thing right now, secure VPN for remote users. How are your remote users coming in? Are you using a free version of LogMeIn or Teams or Zoom or anything along those lines to jump in there, or are they actually using company equipment that they're taking home that has a dedicated SSL VPN, which is a secure socket layer VPN that is tied to the device that you manage? That's a best case scenario for remote users. Let the business supply the device and dictate the terms in which that device is used. But not everybody can do that. So there's what's called a BYOD, or bring your own device scenario. And at that point, you're using an application VPN. Again, vendor management is big here. Understand if what you're doing is compliant with your industry. And usually they will have white papers associated with their application. So review the white papers. If there's a premium version or one that's specific to healthcare, pay for it, because it's worth every penny of it, in terms of technology, but also in terms of showing that you have made best efforts in mitigating the risk. And then email filtering, continuity and archiving. we really shouldn't be sharing PHI or a lot of business transactions in email, but it does happen. So you're going to want to make sure that you are encrypting and securing that email properly, that it is going to where it's supposed to be going, secured where it's supposed to be going, and backed up appropriately. So that's where your continuity and archiving come in, especially if you're business dependent. A lot of account recovery services or billing companies will email out, and they just need to make sure that that portion of what they're doing and how they collect and inform on collection through email is secure. It is common practice, but it's just one of those things where you definitely have to pay attention to it if you're utilizing it. So if you get hit with some cybersecurity issues, some cyber threats, and you're in a ransomware, one of the easiest ways to keep your business operational is to have a backup and disaster recovery plan, one that is fully automated, not one where someone's taking out disks and swapping them every week and taking them home, but one to where you are automating a backup. Usually requires a virtual environment that you're automating to a centralized storage area, but that storage area is replicated offsite. So you have a primary, secondary, and tertiary scenario for your data integrity and backup. What that allows you to do is if you get hit with any kind of virus or malicious software or code, any threat hits you, you can roll back to the most previous version. So if you're doing hourly backups and you get hit, you can roll back to the last hour if someone opened a malicious email. If you have SIEM services, it'll actually lock down that endpoint and allow you to roll back, which is pretty cool stuff. Does have a very premium price tag to it. But again, how much downtime can you afford? How much will downtime cost you? You'd have to do the value statement, kind of understand what you're willing to sacrifice in terms of going down versus staying up. We can get into high availability and business continuity plans, which are kind of the next iteration of business disaster recovery. Really, you pick your flavor based on how long you can be down. If you need to recover from a disaster and a day or two is okay, then a BDR plan is probably where you need to go. If you're looking for a high availability plan, something where you're recovering in hours, then you're going to take the next step. And if you're looking for a business continuity plan, which is exactly what it sounds like, where business is continuous and you're looking at minutes of downtime, then you're looking at a full infrastructure build out that can support that. That also includes a secondary site and sometimes even a tertiary site, and lining that up with your insurance policies. So if you are a medical practice that does surgeries or anything else, primary care, ambulatory care, you're looking at secondary sites that you can fail over into while you're recovering and building that in there, and then how you're going to get your data over there and how you're going to build your infrastructure into it and how quick you can turn around and be up and running. So there's a lot to consider in terms of the technology and the operations, which again, those two overlap so much that they have to work hand in hand. Technology and operations are inseparable in today's world. I definitely encourage you to review your insurance policies for your business too, because fiscally, that's going to mitigate some of the cost in a recovery scenario. Some active defense that we can do in a cyber threat scenario is a complete visibility of what you're doing. Understanding where all your surface areas are for attack and mitigating and remediating risk in those areas. Best effort. IoT devices, you're going to do it from around the outside of the device. In your servers and workstations, you're going to do it with applications such as antivirus or ransomware detection, as well as file level backup or imaging backup if it's on a virtualized network. And then finally, understanding what people do what and where separation of duties and jobs come in and where their liabilities are and training them. Threat prevention with effective mitigation. Again, this just comes back into best case scenarios of antivirus, anti-malware. It's really growing to where there's machine learning and AI. So some of the ability to learn in real time. There's also the difference in blacklisting applications for antivirus versus whitelisting. And what that really gets into is blacklisting takes everything that's a known threat and blocks it. The problem with blacklisting is anything that's not a known threat is not blocked, so it comes in. Whitelisting, such as Bitdefender, which is an application that we use, allows us to say, these are the applications that we want to pass through, block everything else. So even if it's a viable one and it's something that's new to your network, the hiccup in the beginning is going to be, oh, we put this on there and we really needed it, it got blocked. We switched from QuickBooks to Peachtree, and now Peachtree's getting blocked. Well, let's fix it. I know it's not called Peachtree anymore. I can't remember the name of it. But the concept is it's a little bit of interruption in the business, but 20 times more secure. Numbers not real there, but it's a lot more secure. Get into behavior monitoring, endpoint security. Behavior monitoring really comes into modern techniques and everything around malware, whether it's injection based or man in the middle, whether it's user initiated. Again, these are some of the more technical terms of it, but this is where you have a dedicated cybersecurity partner or staff internally on this. Intrusion protection and prevention. The best thing about that is devices that aren't supposed to be on your network, or anybody trying to come in through a VPN portal where maybe they tried to hijack a connection. If they get it wrong or it's unexpected, you get told, and you have the ability to deny or allow on the fly. Biggest thing is keep software up to date. Everyone argues and complains about Microsoft's patching schedule. You're getting patched once, twice a week, or you're getting a new application patch, or even on your phone. Some of the devices you use, or say you go to open it and it's updating. You're like, man, this thing updates all the time. The reason is because cyber threats and cyber criminals are updating their attack vectors all the time. So we have to mitigate them on the fly. Meaning that we do patching and upgrades to mitigate some vulnerabilities in the code, as well as some external or third-party vulnerabilities. It's a pain, but again, it's a necessary in the world today. And the software would just run and continue to run well forever if it wasn't for malicious code and cyber criminals attempting. So it's a best effort scenario from the industry to mitigate that. Keep your antivirus up to date, because that's going to patch in more real time. Most antiviruses are patching multiple times a day, as to where operating systems or applications usually have a patch cycle that's every week to every month. So you can be 7 to 30 days behind on a patch cycle before they release the next one. Your antivirus is doing it as close to real time as you're going to get, especially if you have a higher end AI-based one. Strong passwords, again, not allowing people to use like password 1, and then in the next iteration say, all right, password 2, password 3, so forth and so on. 16 characters with a combination of upper lowercase special characters is a minimum anymore. I mean, at this point, we're looking at that as a minimum, changing them in routine manners every 90 days, and using multi-factor authentication, which we'll get into. Multi-factor authentication is using like your Google Authenticator or any other authenticator that allows you to input your password, open up the device, and it has an alternating code that changes every minute to 3 minutes, depending on how you have it set. You enter that code, or you can have it set up to email you, and you enter the code that's emailed you, text you, or call you. It's always doing a secondary verification of your intent to access the application or data that you're getting into. Installing a firewall. Firewalls are edge devices that control the traffic in and out and monitor it in your office or home. A lot of businesses just run the modem, and then they take the modem and put it right into a switch and then connect everything. You're getting to the internet, but you're wide open. It's a house without a front door at that point. The firewall is the front door, and we can build up layers of security on there, screen door, bolt locks, cameras, access codes, whatever. But I mean, at least get it, and then we can license it and build in the codes as much as you need, and the features that go into it. Be suspicious of unexpected emails. Again, this comes down to user training. really kind of talking with the users, reviewing it. One of the things that we like to do as a company when we come in is sign up some of our end users for phishing simulations. So we actually send the phishing emails and we can see who opens it and who doesn't. And we're going to give real-time reports to that manager of that business or that department and say, hey, so-and-so clicked this email, they opened it. This is the third month in a row they've done it. I know you've been coaching them. Maybe there's an opportunity for training. So then again, we can come in and implement real-time training, or video training is the main thing that we do. We're going to do best efforts in spam filtering. We're going to try and block malicious code in email. But again, it's evolving multiple times a day from various iterations across the world. We can't block it 100%. This is a best practice scenario. But again, people are trained and able to identify it. Be a little bit suspicious of it, you're going to mitigate even more so. So all the cybersecurity components in healthcare right now, we talked about kind of how it can hit technically, what are some of the operational impacts of it. But a lot of things that people don't consider is patient impact. An exposure of the protected health information, PHI, includes financial payment or payment account information, personal non-health information, and it can all be harmful to the individual on many levels. It can be embarrassing, and that causes stress. And if they're recovering from a surgery or a procedure or any provided act, it can slow down the recovery process. If they start getting calls, like in the other case study that we put out there, if the actual ransomware or cyber criminal attacker, hacker, intruder is calling them and saying, hey, I got your information from such and such, you need to pay me or I'm going to let it go. So now they're using the ransomware from the PHI they got from the provider to extort the patient. Again, that can lead to embarrassment, financial stress. All of these can impact mental and physical health of an individual. Financial health, everyone right now is in a weird place in response to COVID and where we're at and where we're going. Physical stress obviously is the highest level of stress that most of us do, and we tend to lean on social crutches, whether it's alcohol, drug abuse, overeating, isolation. A lot of that is a big issue right now, especially in the mental care facilities or with mental care specialists and people that have some struggles in that area. And just sedentary behavior, just being lethargic, not having the drive to do anything. They're stressed, their information's been exposed, they have these bills to pay for the healthcare, now they're being extorted by these cyber criminals. All this just adds up, and it can really put them in a depression, financial hardships, and it's going to slow their recovery process. Healthcare is stressful enough for most Americans. The American Psychology Association was talking about Americans' response to healthcare and how we pay for it. And 64% of us are stressed over the cost of healthcare, and how we're going to handle that systemically is a totally different subject. But compounding it by exposing them or not taking care of them or not doing our obligations as providers and partners and protecting our patients and residents is a big deal, and it's something that we need to consider. If they're already worried about paying and they're getting extorted, it's more stress. And the older generation, specifically as boomers get up there, they're being impacted more and more by this, and they're worried. Something to consider. I mean, cybersecurity and IT is more than just the computer and the network in your environment. It is how you provide care. It is caring for your patients and understanding that their life is extended beyond just the surgery in the moment or the care that you're providing, and actually allowing some compassion towards what life's going to be like for them afterwards. They've already got the stress of paying for it. Who knows their healthcare situation, their insurance situation, but a compounded exposure is that's something that we can prevent, and best efforts, we need to be able to do that. Something for consideration. something that's not always talked about. But again, we focus healthcare, and altruistically, we want to be that partner that not just comes in and takes over your IT for you, but we want to look at influencing how others come to you and ultimately how patients feel about the healthcare industry and technology in the healthcare industry. I'll leave it open for questions now, if there are any. Okay. Well, no questions are up. If you guys have anything come up, feel free to email us or respond here. Some of the contact information is included. You can always reach out to the Kansas Small Business Development Center or Ember directly. We'd be happy to hear from you. Thanks for the time.